So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us here for our online information session on AASSREC's Priority Social Science Priority Grants. Today is just a bit of a briefing, I guess, on the grant program, and a chance for you to ask any questions that you may have. I should start by introducing myself, and my name is Michelle Bruce, and I'm the Secretary General of AASSREC. And I am based in Canberra in Australia, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, whose lands I'm joining you from, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Our AASSREC Secretariat is located in Canberra, but we also have a number of staff in the Secretariat who are located internationally. So we have some staff from who are based in New Delhi, and we also have a staff member who will be joining us in Manila soon. And I think my colleague Neha, who many of you will have met in the or have had some contact with via email, will be joining us very soon. Let me just share my screen, and I'll share a bit of a presentation just to start. So yeah, as I said before, this is just really going to be an overview of the program. This is all based on our grant guidelines, but then I'm going to throw it open at the end of the presentation to all of you if you have any questions that you might like to ask. So in a nutshell, the Social Science Priority Grant Program is, or the objective is to fund and support international collaboration among social science researchers in the Indo-Pacific region, with a focus on high quality research on complex socio-economic issues. So our key goals are regional collaboration, and what we're hoping to achieve are some meaningful collaborations between Indo-Pacific countries, and we're hoping that the research projects and the outcomes will generate knowledge that supports evidence-based policy and innovation. And another goal is promoting inclusive and sustainable development and prioritizing gender equity and social inclusion. And another a key goal is capacity building. So in this program, we are trying to support researchers in low and middle income countries in the region. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about our priority researchers for the program as well a little bit later. So this program is actually one component of a larger, a broader program, which is called Boosting Social Sciences and Their Contribution to Better Lives in the Indo-Pacific. And it's supported, it's an AASSREC program that's been run in collaboration with the Global Development Network and UNESCO, and it's supported by funding from Canada's International Development Research Centre. And it has a number of objectives, the entire program, but it includes mapping and understanding the current state and opportunities for social science. And this is through a number of deep dive country assessments through GDNs, doing research assessments where we assess the production, circulation and uptake of social science research in a number of different countries across the region. We're also supporting high priority research initiatives via research grants such as this priority grant program, but we have another grant program called the International Social Science Collaboration and Development Grant. And this grant program is focused on early and mid-career researchers. And we launched a call earlier this year for applications for that grant program, and they're in the vicinity of just over 5,000 Australian dollars, and they're to support international collaboration for EMCR researchers, once again in low and middle income countries, and there'll be a second call launched in early 2025. So keep an eye out for that one. You or other colleagues may be interested in applying for those grants as well. And another program overview is connecting and empowering social science researchers, research organizations, councils and funders. So we've done that through a series of regional summits and meetings. We also have an AASSREC mentoring program, and we're developing a working policy paper series. And it's our hope that the recipients of this priority social science grant program may be able to actually develop a policy paper that at the end of their research project that we can include in our working policy paper series as well. So the funding that's available in this grant program is in the order of 50,000 Canadian dollars, which is equivalent to 57,750 AUD. Unfortunately, we only have 6 grants available in this round, and so that necessarily means that there are probably going to be some excellent and wonderful project proposals that we just aren't going to be able to fund. The period of the funding is for 12 months, and we're envisaging that the timeline for the project would be between the 1st of November 2024 and the 31st of December 2025. And the reason we've put those dates in is that ASREC will be hosting its biennial conference in early December in 2025 in New Delhi in India, and we would really like to see the recipients of the grant of these grants actually come and present the outcomes of their research at that conference. Now, in terms of the research focus, you may have a proposal for, like, you may have an ongoing research project that you maybe don't have quite enough funding for, and you're looking to obtain some extra funding to assist with that existing project, or you may be looking to develop or pilot a new collaborative research initiative. Either would be eligible for this program. So we'll accept either kind of proposal. I think the key thing to note is the collaboration requirement. This is all about promoting international collaboration. So all applications have to include researchers from at least 2 different Asia Pacific countries. So if your project is only including researchers who are living in one country, say India, but there are no other other researchers that are involved from other countries, then it would not be eligible. And principal applicants need to be a social science researcher, and they also need to be living and working in a low or middle income Asia Pacific country or territory. Now, in our grant guidelines, and all of this information is provided in detail in our grant guidelines, but we've actually provided a list of the countries that we consider to be low or middle income countries, and they are based on the OECD definitions, low and middle income. The other thing is that principal applicants need to be employed or affiliated with a research organization. So that either a university, research institute, or government research agency is fine, but so long as that organization has the capacity to administer and support your proposed project. And a key thing as well, a key requirement for this program is that at least one of the applicants, that can either be the principal applicant or it can be one of the co-applicants, has to be living and working in an AASSREC member country or territory. So what we mean by that is that we have a number of members. We have a list of members on our website, which is available at the URL there. But we have over 15 members that represent over 26 countries. And so you need to have one of the applicants, either principal or co-applicant, has to be living in a country that has an ASREC member. So we don't expect that you would have an affiliation or employed or in any way with that ASREC member organization, but you just need to be living in the same country as that organization. So for example, the National Research Council of Thailand is one of our members. So that means any researcher in Thailand who's located and working in Thailand is eligible to apply. So that can either be as a principal applicant or as a co-applicant. So at least one of the project members needs to be from an ASREC member country or territory. So our website have all of our members up there. This is just a sort of a sample that has the list of organizations, but the other thing is these are essentially the countries, the ASREC member countries and territories. So in terms of who is not eligible, in terms of a principal applicant, if the principal applicant is not a social scientist, then they won't be eligible for the grant. And the other thing is that we need to make sure that the actual project that you're proposing is a social science project. So if it's not a social science project, for example, it's an engineering project, it will not be eligible. once again, it's almost like the opposite. If you're not working in a low or middle income country in the Asia Pacific, cannot be a you cannot be a principal applicant. That doesn't mean that that researchers in high income countries can't be part of a team. You can certainly be part of a team. So if you've got a colleague in Australia or Japan or New Zealand, which is considered high income countries, they can still participate as a co-applicant. They just can't be the principal applicant. And once again, there's that requirement. If you're not living in an AASSREC member country or not proposing collaboration with a researcher who is living in an AASSREC member country or territory, then you wouldn't be eligible. An important thing to note as well is that applicants who are living and working in countries that are subject to international sanctions that prohibit the transfer of funds, then you won't be eligible to be a principal applicant. Can I just ask that everybody please mute their sound, please? Thank you. So while I've said that.
Sorry, you mute your voice.
Thanks. So I think I was just saying international sanctions. Yeah, if you're in a country that is subject to international sanctions, you can't be a principal applicant. And then finally, with co-applicant eligibility, is if you're not eligible to be a principal applicant, you could still be eligible to be a co-applicant. In terms of responsibilities of applicants, it's the principal applicant that will receive the grant funds, ideally via their employing institution, and the principal applicant will be responsible for seeing the completion of that project and ensuring that the funds are spent in accordance with the budget. We can only have one principal applicant per application, and you can have up to 5 co-applicants included in the application. And co-applicants can receive a share of the grant as per the budget, but it's up to the principal applicant to distribute those grant funds to the co-applicants once they've been received. We have a number of priority themes, and for the grant program, and these were developed by our members and other key organizations, funders, and research organizations, academies and councils across the Asia Pacific region. And the top 5 priority themes identified through this process were the following, and that's advancing gender equality, sustainability and climate change, state and social transformations, Indigenous knowledge systems, and intergenerational inequality. So those are the 5 priority themes. You can certainly propose any type of social science project, but we're going to be prioritizing those top 5. And we encourage regional perspectives. So if you if you're going to propose a project that's just focusing on one country, that's perfectly fine. We'd love to see some projects maybe that involve a number of countries, not just researchers, but perhaps the project is focused on a number of different countries. But that doesn't say that if the project is just focusing on one particular country, that's perfectly fine as well. And then we have a number of priority researcher categories. So these are the people that we're really trying to target. We'd love to see applications from women researchers, people with disabilities, researchers from marginalized or disadvantaged groups, and researchers from low and lower middle income countries. So all of researchers in these categories will receive priority. And obviously the application is open to low and all the way up to upper middle income countries, but we really are going to give the priority to the low and lower middle income countries. We'll also give some priority to interdisciplinary projects, and applications need to describe how the principal applicant and the co-applicants meet these categories. So just a short description of how your applicants, how all of the project participants meet those categories is really helpful to the assessing committee. These are all outlined in the guidelines, but in terms of the funds and eligible use of grant funds, the budgets proposed budget needs to be reasonable, directly related to the project activity, and primarily supports the principal applicant. And eligible expenses include direct research expenses such as salaries and wages for research staff, travel and accommodation, visa costs, publication and dissemination fees, the costs of hosting meetings. Their conference attendance is okay, so long as that conference is directly relevant to the project, or perhaps a project participant is speaking at that conference in relation to the project. Of course, any field research or data collection expenses are eligible, same as communication and translation, software licenses, and so forth. But all of this information is outlined in the grant guidelines. One thing I do want to emphasize is a lot of people frequently ask about the administrative costs or inclusion of overheads. And I know a lot of universities and organizations do have a policy on reserving or claiming a component of the research grant funds towards administrative costs, and that's fine. However, in accordance with our funding from the IDRC, the maximum administrative cost that we will allow is 13%. It doesn't have to be 13%. If you want to propose a lower administrative cost, that's perfectly fine, but we won't be able to accept anything more than 13%. And just in terms of how the funds are spent, we don't want to see the grant funds just used solely for meetings or travel. We want the majority of the budget to go towards direct research expenses. This is also all in the guidelines, but some of the things that you can't use the funds for are things like capital expenditure, like real estate and vehicles, financial transactions, or things like alcohol or business class travel and things like that. This is, as you know, it's an open and competitive process. We are willing to support both applied and fundamental research, and all of the applications will be evaluated by an international panel of experts that we've appointed through a public and open call through our AASSREC members and networks. And applications are going to be ranked and based on merit relative to the assessment criteria. Just if a project does meet the assessment criteria, it doesn't guarantee that you'll be offered a grant. As I said, we only have 6 grants available, and that does mean that there are going to be many outstanding projects that we just won't be able to support. And given the number of applications that we're expecting, we won't be able to discuss the outcomes or provide feedback, and there is no appeal mechanism for decisions. Now, the assessment criteria is weighted, and there are 4 criteria. 15% is allocated to the research track record and capacity of the applicant. 25% is weighted according to the alignment with the strategic priorities and the priority themes that we've set. 50% is based on the quality and feasibility of the proposed project. And then 10% is allocated to gender equality, disability, and social inclusion responsiveness, or GEDSI responsiveness. So we'll be considering how GEDSI is incorporated into the project objectives, its design, and the partnerships as well. So we'll be using GEDSI markers in the applications, and that's to identify and assess how well grant applications promote gender equality, social inclusion, and disability rights. So proposals need to outline the steps and considerations taken to address GEDSI objectives in the program, and what we're really wanting to see is some proactive efforts to mitigate social barriers and promote equity. So applicants are going to have to select a category for each of the 3 GEDSI markers that we have, and that ranges. You would select a category of either no impact, low impact, moderate, or high impact for the 3 GEDSI markers. So here you see we've got gender equality marker, a disability inclusion marker, and a social inclusion marker, which looks at the inclusion of disadvantaged and marginalized groups. So in terms of gender equality, if a project has no impact, we would say that would mean, and this is a self-assessment. So if your project doesn't contribute to gender equality, then you would select no impact, but you could select all the way up to high impact if your project is, if gender equality is a main outcome and your leadership and the the partners involved in your project, are focused on gender equality, then you could assess your that GEDSI marker as high impact, and you would do the same for gender, disability, and social inclusion. So it's compulsory to select a category for each of those 3 markers, but essentially we're looking to see some form of impact in at least one of those markers. And a lot of people ask about the application form. So it's an online application process, but we have an example of the form in the grant guidelines. So the grant guidelines are available on our website, and the last 3 or 4 pages of the guidelines actually give you an example of what the application form looks like. And so you can see the questions that are asked and the word limit for each of the fields. So it's the principal applicant's responsibility to ensure that that information is completed and accurate. And principal applicants will need to include all the relevant information about their co-applicant. So that's their names, their positions, their institutions and qualifications. You'll need to provide information about how that each co-applicant will contribute to the project. And you'll need to include information on how the co-applicants meet the priority researcher status, and you'll need to include the co-applicant's CV as well. So we recommend that you try and obtain all of that information beforehand. As I said, the CV is required not just for the principal applicant, but for all co-applicants. And we also need a letter of support attached to the application. So that is from the principal applicant's institution, and it's just a letter confirming that the principal applicant is employed or affiliated with the institution, and the institution is providing its support for the project, including making sure that appropriate infrastructure is available. And that letter needs to be on official letterhead and signed by a delegated authority. So we don't stipulate who that delegated authority, that is up to your organization. Because a lot of people say, well, who needs to sign it? And that is up to your organization, but it does need, in some cases, it might be the head of department. For others, it may be someone more senior. But the most important thing is that we see that it's on official letterhead, and whoever is signing it states that they are the delegated authority to undertake to provide that letter of support. The timeline that we're looking at, we opened applications on the 1st of August, and applications are going to close in 10 days' time on the 12th of September. So we'll be assessing applications in September and October, and we anticipate that we'll be able to advise applicants of the outcome by the end of November. Now, we're suggesting that the grant activity can commence after the 1st of November, but what we would like to keep in mind is that we know that some researchers will need to obtain country approvals and legal approvals before they undertake the project, particularly if you're receiving money internationally, and this can take some time. So if it's likely that the approval process is going to take time in your country, then we'd recommend perhaps maybe delaying your start date. You might want to suggest a start date of the 1st of December or of January, or wherever that may be. But the most important thing is that we need the project needs to be completed by the 31st of December 2025. And as I said before, the deadline for applications is the 12th of September. It officially closes at 11:45 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So please keep a note for on what the time zone difference is in your country. But the applications will just no longer be available online. It is an online application portal that we have, which is available at that URL, portal.asrec.org. When you go in and submit an application, once you've submitted your email address, you can save that application. You'll receive an email, and then you can go back in and continue working on that application and save it again and keep going back and editing it until it is submitted. So you don't have to do it all in one sitting. And it's an expectation that the applications will be completed in English. And once you've submitted an application, you should receive an automated email acknowledgement that your application has been submitted. So please do check that. Sometimes people say, I haven't received anything, and often it's gone into people's junk mail folders or spam folders. Some universities do have firewalls that it gets blocked in. So please do check. But if you haven't received, if you've submitted an application and you haven't received confirmation that it has been received, please don't hesitate to contact us and email the AASSREC Secretariat, and we can check for you, because we'd rather you check as soon as it's submitted rather than later on, so that we can guarantee that your application will actually be assessed. For those that are successful in receiving a grant, we will enter into a legally binding grant agreement with your institution, so the principal applicant's institution, and both AASSREC and the grant recipient need to sign the agreement before any funds are released. So we advise, please do not commence any of the project activities or make any financial commitments until that grant agreement is fully executed. And as I mentioned before, some grant recipients, depending on where you're working, some are going to have to obtain permissions and clearances from the appropriate government authorities of the countries in which the work under the project is being performed. So that can take some time, and we allow up to 60 days from the time of the offer of the grant in order to obtain those clearances. So if we haven't received those approvals within 60 days, then we do reserve the right to refuse the payment of the grants or make alternative arrangements. So there may be some flexibility. If you can foresee that it's going to be tough to get those approvals, then we may look at some other options. We can be flexible. We may look at perhaps maybe one of the co-applicant institutions may be able to receive the funds, or so we can be flexible there so that we don't have any unnecessary delays. And we're going to be trenching the payment. So it'll be distributed over 3 payments. 50% is paid on execution of the grant agreement, and then 40% is paid after 6 months once we've received a satisfactory progress report. And then the final 10% is paid on acceptance of the final report. So the payment method is preferably to the institution of the principal applicant. And what we generally do is once, for example, the grant agreement has been executed, we will then ask the principal applicant's organization or institution to generate an invoice, and then we'll pay the grant payment on invoice. Just briefly, the responsibilities of grant recipients are outlined in our grant guidelines, but obviously we want to make sure that that people obtain the relevant ethical approvals before conducting their project. And as alluded to before, there are some reports that applicants will need to provide. So the first one is due 6 months after the start of the project, and then the final report, which includes a financial statement, is due within 2 months after the project completion. So if you're completing a project on the 31st of December 2025, we would need the final report by the end of February 2026. And once again, there are really more detailed information in the grant guidelines, but also when we provide the grant agreement, we'll have really clear details of what or are looking for in the project, but it's usually things like, you would state the objectives of the project and the details of all the international visits and meetings you had, the progress against those agreed activities and outcomes. You describe how the ethical standards were maintained, outline the project outcomes and findings. We want to see the progress in international collaboration more generally. So if this was a new collaboration, you might want to talk about what the opportunities for further collaboration might be, or the directions for future research. As I said before, a detailed financial statement that shows how the funds have been spent and in accordance with the budget that you submitted as part of your application. And just a note is because the funding we've received from this program is from the IDRC, there are a number of requirements and that we need to meet and that our subcontractors and the grant recipients need to meet as well. And that includes compliance with IDRC's open access policy and open data statement of principles, which are all outlined in the grant guidelines and also the grant agreement. We're always available for support if you have any questions. So if you're having any technical difficulties with the online application form, please don't hesitate to send us an email and we'll see if we can sort it out for you. But I know I've seen that there are some applications have already been submitted without any technical difficulties, so hopefully you won't have any. If you have any questions at all, we're very happy to answer them. You can contact us by phone, but email is probably a great first start. And as I've said before, please do refer to the grant guidelines before submitting an application. Those grant guidelines are available on the AASSREC website. And just to make sure that everything you're submitting into the application is in accordance with the guidelines. There are also frequently asked questions on the website as well. So that might save you, if you go through and have a look, it might save you some time of having to email us and wait for a reply when you can find the answer online already. So now I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. And there are a couple of ways you can do this. If you're interested in asking a question online, you're welcome to just raise your hand and then we will invite you to speak. Or if you don't feel comfortable speaking into the camera, then you can submit your question into the chat. And I see if there's a question there about if two persons can be co-principal applicants, and if so, how this can be entered onto the application. And as so it's been answered there. Unfortunately, can only be one principal applicant, but that other applicant can be listed as a co-applicant. And I think Nick, you have a question there. Would you like to?
Sure. Thank you so much, and thanks, by the way, for all the quick responses to email questions so far. It's been really helpful and you've made things really transparent, and this session has been awesome too. You mentioned an AASSREC conference in New Delhi in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my Excel sheet open trying to get the budget to include some money for that. Do you know roughly, like, is it a 1-day thing, a 1-week thing, and if there will be a registration fee?
Okay, so it will be, well, it's still to be developed, but usually the AASSREC conferences are a 2-day program.
Okay.
However, this one is probably going to be longer. I think we're probably going to be looking at about 3 days for this one because of the fact that we would like to invite the successful recipients to come and present. And we also want to use this as an opportunity to have another regional summit. So in May, in Thailand, in May this year, we got together all of over 90 representatives from research academies, councils, research funding agencies together. And we'd like to have another one of those meetings when we're in India as well. So there's probably, potentially 3.5 days maybe of
that's awesome. So budgeting 4 nights would be good.
I think so, yes. Yeah.
But not like these other conferences where there's like an €800 rego fee that we need to.
Absolutely no. Usually the fee is there is no fee usually for actual registration. So it's usually just people would need to pay for what's there. accommodation, and we usually would and their travel, and we usually have bursaries available as well for people from low and middle income countries to come along as well. So I've got Clara.
Hi, yeah, I'm Clara. I'm from Indonesia. So we plan to submit an applications proposal. I'll be the so my question is, can the principal applicants from Indonesia, because we have the institutions to manage the funding, but the co-applicants from Sri Lanka, for example.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And what is the expected level of academic credentials for the principal investigator?
So we don't have any expectations in terms of the academic credentials. Obviously, it is one of the criteria in the assessment criteria. So obviously, if you have a more senior applicant, that's obviously going to do well. But the thing is, we'd also like to see early career researchers involved as well. So it's just also the program supports capacity building. So I don't think I don't want to sort of put restrictions on there, because I think the assessing committee will actually look at this holistically and look at who in the team is there, and obviously sometimes people need to submit their applications depending on the country that they're involved in. So like there are restrictions in terms of the low and middle income country. So if we can see that there's a mix really in the types of and the credentials and the qualifications and experience of the researchers, I think that will be a positive thing.
Just while I have the mic, can I ask another question? So, can we budget for example, gender advisor, or on a consultation basis, just to give us some advice? Can we put it in as part of our budget?
I think so. I think that would be a feasible thing, particularly if it's focused on a gender advisor, and given that that's one of the aims of the program, I think that if you can justify as to how that will benefit the project and assist the team, I think that it's certainly fine. Yeah, there's nothing to restrict that. And then I've got Anna.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Indonesian based in Thailand. So I have two questions. First is about the member organization. So for example, here as I'm based in Thailand, do I have to invite a staff from, for example, the National Research Council of Thailand to be co-applicants? That's number one. No, okay, that's great.
So you don't need to have any kind of affiliation with the AASSREC member organization. The fact that you live in Thailand, you're eligible, because it's just thanks to the National Research Council of Thailand that they're a member, that they've now made it eligible for anybody in Thailand to apply.
Yeah, okay. So my second question is about the budget. So the total amount available, is it each grant out of 6 must or allowed to submit the budget of that total amount, 57,000 something Australian dollar, or you would like to split those total amount of the budget into 6 first of all applications. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So no, each grant is a maximum of 57,750. So we'll have 6 grants of 57,000. So yeah, the total amount that you can apply for is 57,750.
Okay, one last question. So in terms of the collaboration from at least 2 member countries, so my project plan is actually going to work in Indonesia and Thailand as well. So is it okay that the project implementation is actually happening in 2 countries, not only in one? So that definitely we will also have researchers from both countries.
Yes, absolutely. So if that research is being undertaken in 2 different countries, that's great. We'd love to see that. That's no problem
Great.
at all.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I've got Sakshi Aurora.
Good morning, ma'am. This is Sakshi from India. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, I have a little question for you that how flexible is the budget if you want to if you have certain things cropping up, say as in from the emergency fund, right at the end. And also the second question, do we also include conferences as one of the expenditure that we can go through if at all we plan for that, or a seminar, a small one that we plan in accordance to the subject line?
Yeah, so I think if you're asking me if I'm wrong, if I'm not answering your question correctly, but in terms of the budget, there is flexibility. So obviously you would propose what your budget's going to be, but then sometimes things don't always go according to plan. So we can be flexible with that, so long as usually if we sort of see a major variation, we may want to, as your project goes on, if there are going to be any changes, we can be flexible. So usually people will report to us and say, we've had a change of plans or some unforeseeable event has happened. And so we, instead of using the money for this, we'd like to use the money in some other way. And that's perfectly fine. We would just like to see a justification as to why that the budget has been allocated differently. And usually it's if it's more than 10% difference, then we'd want some consultation as to beforehand as well. But we're generally pretty flexible. And sorry, what was the second question?
The second question was about that if we hold conferences or seminars with respect to the topic,
Yes.
can that be also a part of the budget?
Yes, it can be, so long as it's directly related to the project, or perhaps one of the project participants might be speaking at a conference or seminar about your project. So that would be fine, so long as you can justify that it's relevant to that particular project.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then I've got Jasper.
Hi, I would just like to ask. I'm a research applicant working at the Research and Innovation Office of our university here in the Philippines. Can I submit a research proposal related to circular economy and active mobility devices through scouting for a suitable principal applicant, since I'm not a social scientist and the institution in which he or she works at serves as the conduit for the admin work?
Yeah, so if you've got, as long as you can find a social scientist that in one of the eligible countries to be the principal applicant, because I guess the thing is that the funds really should be predominantly supporting the principal applicant. And as I said before, it's okay to have non-social scientists involved, but the primary applicant that we want to be supporting is a social science researcher.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then we've got, is it Corinne? I'm sorry if I've spelled your name incorrectly. I've pronounced it incorrectly.
Hello, I'm Karine from the University of New Caledonia. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have understood from your presentation that New Caledonia would be eligible as a co-applicant. Can you confirm this?
Yes, there would be as a co-applicant, because it's not considered a low income or middle income country, but definitely as a co-applicant. Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if we are not on time to present a proposal this year, is there any chance that the grant will be reproposed next year, or it's just one shot?
At this point, it's just this year, but hopefully we will be able to obtain some further funding that we can actually continue the program next year. So that's something that we're actively working on.
Okay, thank you very much. And are you going to share this PowerPoint presentation with all the participants of the meeting?
Yes, we will, and we'll be putting it up on the website as well.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you. And there's a question from Malika Sankar. Oh, I think you're muted at the moment, so we can't hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And I have already received a AASSREC project this year. Am I eligible to apply for one more? With the other co-applicants from my own university, I would like to do a project on mothers of the kids who have ASD, autistic spectrum disorders. In India, when we are considering the mothers give more, they are the people who takes care of these kids and their problems, their challenges. We would like to study and would like to submit. Am I eligible to apply as a principal investigator? This is my first question.
So the answer is yes. There's nothing to prevent you from applying for this grant as well. Yeah.
So I can apply as a principal
Yes, you
investigator.
can. Yes.
Thank you. Because I'm already doing AASSREC1. That's what this question was
Yes.
raised. Okay.
Yeah, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. And it was my, lifetime achievement, I should say. Like I was longing for these kind of things. And then my second question is, you require people as an early careers. I just finished my 6 years after my PhD. So can I do, or should I make others as this thing? Or is 6 years is okay? I just
it's
completed
okay. Yeah, it's okay. And I think, like I said before, we'd like to see a mix. So but if there are some other researchers as well that may be more experienced as well, it might be great to have them included in your project team as well. But at the end of the day, it's, I suppose, it's going to come down to the quality of your project. That's where the majority of the weighting goes down to.
All right. My question number 3, like we have a lot of issues related to environment in India. So if I would like to develop a product that can help the farmers in in detecting, say for example, a wild animal is attacking on their field, and if they're getting a census through their mobile apps or anything that okay, something is approaching, or they can create some sound and they can move them away from the farmland. For such kind of developmental products, will I get AASSREC project for developing a product?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's I suppose a commercialization aspect to that as well, I suppose. But that potentially, but that's fine as well.
That's fine. Okay, because we have a lot of environmental issues, and there's wild animals coming to the farmland and taking away their fruits, I should say. So these are the troubles that we face. So I think AI is there, integrated technology is there. So being a social scientist, I'm just giving an idea. I would like to patent. I'm from Christ University, India. We have separate department for engineering and social science and etc. So I can accumulate all these people, develop my product and do that. So that's the reason.
Yep, that would be fine.
That is all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sakshi, did you have another question in?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, this is regarding the co-partners from where we can collect as in our co-PIs from. So it was mentioned that the PI should be from a low-income Asian country, low or middle-income Asian country. However, we can choose another partner from any of these Pacific, Asia Pacific countries, right? Which includes Australia, or else it can also be Japan, I think.
Yes, absolutely. You can have anyone. Any researcher from any country in the Asia Pacific region, provided that the principal applicant is from a low and middle income country, and that you've got at least one co-applicant or applicant that is from an AASSREC member country.
Yes, and we can have multiple countries also, not restricted to 2 countries alone.
Absolutely, yes. If you want to have more countries, that's wonderful. Yes, just at least 2, minimum of 2.
Okay, and the confusion which I have with respect to, when we take a topic like, for example, old age, so which actually talk about the intergenerational inequality can be brought into that. But there are certain 3 criteria which we need to look into, that is gender equality, and then disability, and also social the parameter, which is actually social upliftment, that is actually inequality or something. So certain topics, I think it is very difficult to bring it in the disability component. So do you consider only those research where all three categories are in the medium or higher, or some components will be lower in certain, not the first and the second I can ensure to be in the medium or higher in my topic, but disability may not be directly coming here in the population which I'm looking at.
Yeah, no, we don't expect that you would have impact in all three markers. So if disability is not included, that's okay. As I said before, we just want to see some form of impact in at least one of those. And obviously those that projects that have a higher impact in perhaps all three, or may score higher and be ranked higher. So it just depends, but it's worth 10% of the thing. So it's going to have some sort of impact, but it's not essential. So I wouldn't worry too much if your project doesn't meet all of the, or if you don't have some impact on all three, disability, all three GEDSI markers. Yeah, it's not a requirement.
Ma'am, if you want to communicate with you with certain doubts in between, may not be taking a huge query in the mail, a long query in the mail, but one very pertinent, very specific doubts, if you want to ask, can we mail it to you or else to anyone and from your side?
Yes.
Can you share the mail ID in that case, please?
Yes, sure. I will pop it into the chat.
Sure.
So it's also on our website, and it's in the presentation. So we'll share out the presentation that I've prepared today with all of the people that registered.
Okay.
Yeah. So but I've just put in, that was incorrect. Sorry, I've just put in, there is no AU at the end, so it's just info@AASSREC.org. So that is it. Okay. Ravi, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. I'm from Sri Lanka. I'm doing the PhD in the UK. Is it possible to do that in my project in the principal investigator as a Sri Lankan and another person from the UK? Is it possible?
So you need to have a minimum of researchers from a minimum of 2 Asia Pacific countries. So if you've only got one researcher from Sri Lanka and one researcher in the UK, that's not going to meet the eligibility requirements. So you can still have somebody from the UK, provided that you've got 2 countries in the Asia Pacific region in there.
Okay.
So you need to have a researcher from another country.
Great, ma'am. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I'm just wondering, Neha, feel free to speak out. I think some of the questions have been answered in the chat, but I just wanted to I think I'm a principal applicant from a low income Asia Pacific country. My PhD supervisor from New Zealand will be my other applicant. So yeah, that would be fine because New Zealand is a country in the Asia Pacific, and so long as the principal applicant is from a low income, low or middle income country, that would be fine. And I think yeah, as I said, there was another question about can you have collaborators from Germany or Bhutan? So the answer is yes, provided you've got 2 researchers from at least 2 Asia Pacific countries in there. Then there's a question about, is a master's degree in home science? And I have to apologize that I'm not quite sure what home science covers. So perhaps you might want to send an email through to us, but generally there's a degree of self-selection really in terms of what is social sciences. It's quite broad. So you're certainly, maybe I might need some more clarification on exactly what that is, but I think it's generally speaking, if it's it's generally really obvious to us if it's not a social science, like if it's clearly in the science, the natural sciences or physical sciences, or technology sciences, those sorts of things. But it's really quite broad. And then there we've got applicants from Malaysia eligible to submit applications as the principal investigator? Absolutely. Malaysia is an AASSREC member organization thanks to the Malaysian Social Science Association, and it is a middle income country. So researchers in Malaysia are eligible to be a PI. Law definitely is a social science. So yeah, we've got the answer to that. So there's some nice comments there. I think people wanting to share. So yeah, and there is questions there about whether you can execute in one country or it must be cross-country. It can all be executed in one country. It's really quite broad. And then if the is eligible if the applicant is from Myanmar origin, currently living and working in Thailand. Yes, absolutely. If you're living and working in Thailand, Thailand is a middle income country and an AASSREC member country. So anyone in Thailand is eligible to be a PI. Cultural studies is definitely a social science. And we've answered the question about the registration fee. Sorry. Most and we've said about the Europe one. There is not currently a member in Nepal. However, we are hoping to change that. So the Nepal Academy we're currently in chatting with, and we're really hoping that the Nepal Academy will join AASSREC. So, and we had a representative from the Academy attend our regional summit in Thailand in May. So, so yes, hopefully the answer will be yes, but not quite. And I think we've had, yeah, the main applicant. It's sort of, I guess we wanted to be kind of open because in terms of nationality and whether you're living in a country. So if your nationality is your nationality is perhaps say in Sri Lanka, but you're working in Europe, we will still look at it. I guess we're looking. Our main criteria is living and working in an AASSREC, in a low income country, because generally there are fewer opportunities and less support and financial support in those countries than than if a national like an expat was working in Europe or the US or something like that, or Australia even. So we're not going to say you can't apply because we'd like to see the proposal, but it may be that the committee may decide, and the assessing committee may decide. We'll look at where that will really come into the fray, and how much support that the applicant has. So I wouldn't want to say no, you can't apply, but I think applicants that are living and working in low and middle income countries are probably going to receive probably be prioritized and will be ranked higher. So Myanmar is yeah, we've answered that. Eligible so long, but it's not an AASSREC member country, but so long as you're collaborating with somebody from an AASSREC member country, then that's perfectly fine. And once again, if there are countries that do have sanctions, then we can always be flexible if there are a co-applicant. So if there's a co-applicant from a country that doesn't have sanctions, then we might be able to allocate the funds there. So there's always a bit of flexibility. We don't want to disadvantage applicants in low and middle income countries just because of issues we may have with funding, like in issuing the funding. So there may be other ways that we can support them. And so we would say, even if you don't put, because we've said we can't, if there are sanctions, you can't put them as a principal applicant, maybe list the other applicant, from another country and explain why. And yes, and we've talked about flexibility of budgets. Yeah, so we've got the answers to the budget. And I think, Neha, if there are any other questions that I haven't answered. So we've got, I'm a research applicant working at the Research and Innovation Office.
Not
yeah,
much.
we've asked that question already.
I have almost replied to people I was replying when you were presenting. There was just 2-3 repeated questions, which I think if you answer them for people, they would be happier. One being that if the principal applicant is working in an organization, but the co-principal or the co-applicant is not associated with some organization, are they eligible?
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. If the principal applicant is affiliated, but the co-applicant is not affiliated, yeah, so it's not employed or not affiliated with another university, that's fine as well. Yeah. So it just needs to be the principal applicant that needs to be affiliated so that we can facilitate the payment of the grant.
Yeah, and other question I think that you can clarify is that people are asking that since it is a collaborative work between 2 countries across, so they can divide the funds, because we do not provide any additional support, right, for this. It is the fund that is the main principal fund that we are giving, that has to be divided.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly, but yeah, so the idea is that we will provide the grant funds to the principal applicant. There may be the co-applicants may need to receive some of that funding, and the principal applicant would arrange for the co-applicant to receive that funding from there, whether it's on a contract basis or what have you.
That part is fine, perfectly fine. I think the question that I understood what they're saying is that the amount that we have written is the only amount that we will provide. We will not provide any additional support, right?
No, that is it. And that and the other thing I want to clarify is that 57,750 AUD, that's our budget for the maximum budget for each project, and that includes the administrative fee as well. So you can't increase. In fact, the application form physically won't allow you to submit a budget higher than 57,750. So that is the maximum amount. And I think that's it, just looking at time as well. We will send out the PowerPoint presentation to everybody that registered today, as well as a recording of the meeting so that you can refer back to it. And as I said, if you have any further queries at all, if you wanted to, if there's a specific question that you have about your particular project, feel free to reach out to us at info@AASSREC.org, and we'd be happy to help you. And we look forward to receiving your applications. And thanks for attending today.